So today we have a seller transaction contract to close or offer to close. We're going to touch on the things that we've already touched on in the last couple weeks. And then we'll move on. So I did share the spreadsheet that I have on right now. It's in the chat. And I'm sure Abby will link it to the recorded training somehow because she's magic like that. So that if you're watching this on recording, you still have access to the same spreadsheet. It is the same spreadsheet as the one that we used a few weeks ago for the purchase transaction action plan that we went through of kind of how a perfect transaction would flow for a buyer. There's just another tab at the bottom called listings. So that's what we're working off of today. And again, this is going to be like your ideal action plan or transaction flow if it all went according to like a perfect world. And of course, every transaction rolls just like perfection. So we already talked about the listing appointment, right? We're going to set that listing appointment. We're going to make sure your contacts are in your database. If they're not there already, make sure you pull comps, run that CMA. You're going to drop off that pre-listing packet. I like to drop mine off with a pop by, just throwing that out there, like some little token that they have to remember me and keep and remind them of how stellar I am. You're going to get that signed listing agreement. And then I didn't pull up the listing emails. So let me pull those up for you so you can see what I do there. Let's see if I've got an email. I may have to dive into. There we go. Listing email templates. I don't know why it didn't come up when I said email, but that's all right. So once I get a signed listing agreement, I have some email templates that I utilize. I'll put a link to those in the chat box as well. Once it lets me share it because it fully opens. I think there's like a series of 7 emails. No, that's okay. Hold on. Just getting my, okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. So I'll share that link here in a second, but I have right here, after I get that signed listing agreement, to start my listing emails. And just so everybody knows, it's not on here. The goal is to get that signed listing agreement in person, right? When we're sitting there at the listing appointment, get it signed. Okay, ideally, perfect world, it's signed there at the table as we're going over that listing agreement. If it's something you send out later or after I get that signed listing agreement, the next things that I send out for signatures are going to be all those things. Thank you, Abby. All those things that are disclosures that don't require the sellers to answer questions. So that would be like your water conserving plumbing fixtures, carbon monoxide disclosure, your water heater, smoke detector, your square footage and lot size, your statewide buyer and seller advisory, your disclosure information advisory, the market conditions advisory. Usually have them sign with the listing agreement, okay, because it talks about the fact that they're ultimately in charge of what we decide to list that property for. But if that hasn't been signed yet, the market conditions advisory. If you're in an area that has a regional disclosure, this would be a good time for that regional disclosure, like the Solano County Regional Disclosures and Disclaimers Advisory. I was trying to think, the wildfire disaster advisory doesn't get signed by the sellers, but I usually include that with my disclosures, just so the buyers have a copy of it. So I make sure they can get a copy of that one. So I think that covers just about everything that goes out with that. And of course, you've got all those other documents that are attached to your listing agreement, like your agency disclosure, your PRBS, which is your possible representation of more than one buyer and seller. You've got your wire fraud advisory. You've got your Fair Appraisal Act advisory. You've got your privacy policy, consumer privacy policy, the seller's inspection advisory, although I don't think it's called that anymore. I think they changed the name of it. But anyways, all those things that are attached to that listing agreement, of course, got signed at the same time of the listing agreement. And then I get all those other things signed so that at the time of the listing agreement or within 24 hours, my goal is to have everything signed and completed that I'm going to need for that file on the listing side, except for your seller property questionnaire, transfer disclosure statement, except if you have the exempt seller disclosure, then we would use that instead. And then if it was built before 19 78, you're going to have that lead-based paint disclosure, and built before 1965, you have the earthquake hazards questionnaire. Okay, those 4 forms. Oh, and then the FERPTA, you can either sign, I like to send it out through Glide. Glide has the option for it. I send that out through Glide. So your FERPTA, your the disclosure. You can also send that out with your other disclosures, because we don't actually answer questions anymore. We just have them sign it that they're going to disclose that information to a third party. So I don't think they have to answer questions anymore on it. So I think you can sign those out with those other, like the water heaters and stuff. Okay, but those main 4 that you have questions on, the seller transfer disclosure, the transfer disclosure statement, the seller property questionnaire, the earthquake hazards, and the lead-based paint, those I send out through Glide as it gets closer to our on-market date. Okay, any questions about that process that I use? All right, perfect. Once I've got that signed listing agreement, I'm going to start my listing emails. Abby threw a link to this in the chat box, so you should be able to see it up there. Email 1 goes out at signed listing agreement. If you have a transaction coordinator that goes above and beyond, then they might be able to do this. If you have an admin, your admin should be able to execute this. That's who used to execute this for me, was my admin. So email 1 is, thanks again for trusting us to list your home. Our intention is to make this process as smooth and painless as possible. In order to help us market your home correctly and serve you in the best way possible, please complete the following survey. And that takes them to that Google Forms doc that I've shared in the past, that asks them for all the information in their about their house. So anything that I'm going to need to input that into the MLS goes into that form. So let's see how fast I can find that one. We're going to go Google Forms, search. I don't know if it's in this. No, I didn't think it was in this Google Drive. So I'll find that for you in a minute. All right, we'll come back to that. I will find that form for you. Items to watch for as we get closer to your on-market date. We will need to come by and pick up a spare key if you haven't already given us one. My goal is at the listing appointment, I got that spare key. A for sale sign will be installed within 10 days of going on market. If you do not want a sign, please let us know. Again, if it's going to go within 24 hours of on market, if you're anywhere outside of the Barrie service area, we will be installing a for sale sign in your yard to help market to your neighbors and those that may be passing by. I should probably combine those. It's been a while since I've edited this. We will be scheduling professional photos. You do not need to be home for this appointment. We just ask that you remove or secure any pets in the garage during this time. We will not be photographing the garage or the inside of any closets. Okay, they just don't add to the listing unless it's like an amazing, and then I would edit it for that listing. We'll be scheduling pre-listing inspections that we have discussed. This may include a pest, home, or roof inspection. Sarah, my transaction coordinator, will be handling all the paperwork on our transaction. Continue to look for emails from me to help you get your home ready to shine and make this transaction seamless. Here are some tips on prepping your house for photos and sale, right? Exterior, keep grass freshly cut, remove all the clutter, apply paint, right? Interior, remove as much as possible from your countertops and the inside of your showers and tubs. Nobody wants to see what your toothpaste looks like or what shampoo you use. Remove excess wall hangings, furniture, knickknacks. Consider a temporary storage unit, especially personal photos. Clean or paint walls, ceilings, trim, baseboards, shampoo carpets, clean organ, right? So I'm getting them set up for success with that first email after they've hired us to list their home. All right, hold on just a second. We are going to go Google Drive, type form, search. Oh, it's not in this folder either. That's very sad. All right, I will find it, but it's a Google form. I know I've shared it in our Facebook groups. If you go to the Foxhole and search like listing input form, I've shared it there so that you guys have access to it. But what it does is we send this link out in this email. The sellers, in fact, we should be able to click on it. Sellers click on it. It takes them to a Google form that's going to start asking them all those questions, right? Get to know you and your home. They're going to hit next. It's going to ask them in the order that it goes into the MLS. Okay, so these are all arranged appropriately so that it takes it one at a time. It's going to ask them how many, are you the only seller? Or, how do you like to be contacted? It's going to ask them for their emails and their phone numbers to make sure I have everything accurate. It's going to ask them if they have pets or kids, if there's times that they'd prefer not to show the property or any showing restrictions. And then it's going to start asking them like, oh, do you have solar? And if they answer yes, then it's going to take them to a solar section. If they answer no, it skips that. Do you have a pool? Right? What kind of roof do you have? How old is your water heater? So ask them all those questions. What kind of flooring do you have? What's the exterior of the property? So now I'm no longer guessing at what to put in that MLS input. They've answered all those questions for me, and it's on them if it's wrong. I mean, I still try to fix it if it's wrong, and I know it's wrong, but that's the goal there. All right. Transaction action plan. There we go. All right. So listing email goes out number 1. And like I said, there's about 7 listing emails leading up to our first day on market. So I usually like to space them out on the time that I have available from the time we get that listing agreement signed until the time that it's going to go on market. Okay, so it's not always spaced like every other day. Sometimes it's once a week if it's several weeks out. Sometimes it's every 3 days. Sometimes it's every day. So it just depends on what you have. Pre-listings, now we have that signed listing agreement. We've started our emails. We're going to make sure our database is updated. Okay. We're going to make sure that we send all of our listing paperwork to your admin or your transaction coordinator. Okay. Remember, it should be in SkySlope within 24 hours of signed listing agreement. You should have that document into SkySlope. Send seller contact information to transaction coordinator. I make sure my transaction coordinator has their emails and phone numbers. Input listing into SkySlope, again, within 24 hours of contract. Create HLM file. That's my HomeLight listing management file. So I know I talked about that during the buyer. I can open it up and show you, but I create a HomeLight listing management file for all of my listings. And I add, Kimberly, I don't have the link to the Google form yet. I will find the backend link, but if you search it in the Foxhole, you should be able to find it. It was there someplace, but I will try to find that form. My HomeLight listing management file, that's what I'm going to share to the MLS. I'm going to upload all those disclosures to that HLM file so that buyers have those disclosures up front and have access to those. And then any reports or disclosures, the preliminary title report or CC&Rs are all going to go into that file. Okay, I'm going to share it with my sellers. My transaction coordinator has access to it. And then I would share it with any potential buyers agents and buyers. And then ultimately with the agent that writes the offer to me. Okay. And I create that file early on. 1 week prior to active, I send the disclosures out via Glide. Okay, and we've talked about Glide in the past. That's where I do my TDS, my SPQ, the lead-based paint disclosure, the earthquake hazard disclosure, and the wildfire. So if you've got if it's in a high or very high fire hazard severity zone and you need the full wildfire fire hardening disclosure, that can be sent out through Glide as well, because they have to answer questions. So anything that has questions that get answered, I send those through Glide because I like that Glide takes it into chunks and asks them things one question after another. And if they answer yes, it prompts them for that explanation. So it makes sure that nothing gets missed. Okay. Usually during my pre-listing, I try to make sure I take a picture of the front of the home before my photos are done. That way I can start kind of pre-marketing that home. And then I'm going to start inputting that listing into the MLS. Keep in mind that you don't have to, like, if today's our on market date, I don't have to like put everything into the MLS today. You can save it as a draft in the MLS before you have all the information. So that's one option. We can start inputting that. It saves it for a draft for like 30 days. So you've got quite a bit of time to get it in there and make sure everything's appropriate, put the description in, come back, rework it. That's the other thing that Google form has. It's like, hey, what would you like us to make sure that we mention in your property description? Because sellers can be kind of bossy when it comes to that. And I want to make sure I get it ahead of time so I can include those features instead of them looking at it and going, oh, can you change it up? Because that's kind of a pain. Okay. So send out those disclosures. Again, I don't do it until 1 week prior to active. If you're using Showing Time or a showing system that's going to manage your showings for you, make sure that you get it into Showing Time with the seller's emails. Okay, it's super important that you have the seller's emails in there because when the sellers download the Showing Time app, if that's what you're using, their account's going to link to that listing based on their emails. Okay, so that's super important that you make sure you put their emails in there. And then put the HomeLight listing management link into the MLS. Oh, input, I skipped the stage of input disclosures into HomeLight listing management. Okay, and those are once they're done. Schedule photos, order staging, order pre-listing inspection. So all those are going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on what you're doing with your listings. Within 10 days of on market, I'm going to order that sign install, either to be installed before, so it's coming soon, if you're allowed to do that in your current market, or if it's not allowed in the market in which your listing is located, then I would still call to schedule that sign install at least 10 days before on market, but I'm going to schedule it 24 hours before on market. Okay, so remember, we can't start marketing our properties to the public in areas that don't allow coming soons until 24 hours before it's active in the MLS and ready to be shown. Okay, so keep that in mind. Oh, the other thing that I was going to say about the input into the MLS, there's two ways to do it. I mentioned you could save it as a draft. So at any time as we're putting that listing in there, we can save as a draft. Also, if I input it today with an on-market date of April 4th, and then I hit save and submit, it's not going to go live until 12 a.m. on April 4th. So once you're done with that input, go ahead and save it and throw it in there. And then that listing pops up without you having to do anything on its on market date. Okay, so that was circling back to the input in the MLS. Make a copy of the house key. Super important. I cannot stress this enough, because at some point, some agent's going to forget to put your key back in the lockbox, and you're going to be sad because now you're going to have to go back to the seller and be like, hey, somebody stole the key. I need another copy of it. They're going to be like, somebody did what? Somebody's out there with my key? You're like, yeah, I think I can track them down, but I need another key copy. We don't want to have to ask the seller for a copy of the key. So have your own key copy made. The other thing that often happens when a property is listed, more times than I can count, is the seller's going to lock themselves out of their house. And they're going to be like, can you let me in? Okay, it's a good idea to put like a regular lockbox and a contractor's lockbox on the listing, each with a key. So if somebody steals that key, you can direct people that if you got more showings to use that contractor's box. If the seller locks themselves out, they can use the contractor's box, and I would still have another key at the office. Okay, or sometimes they just ride around in my car with me. Okay, you're like, Amy, why do sellers lock themselves out of their house when their house is on the market? Because they're not used to locking their doors. Okay, let's be honest. Most sellers probably don't lock their doors on a regular basis, or at least don't lock the door from like the garage to the house. So they open the garage door, they go in that way, right? They end up getting locked out. I promise it happens. Okay, once we have that copy of the house key, we're going to install that key box. Again, you may want to do like a Barry's lockbox, and you may want to do like a contractor's lockbox, which is one with the codes. You can pick those up for like 20 bucks at Home Depot. Okay, it's always a good idea, because then if an out of area agent comes and wants to show your property, you're not like inconvenienced by having to interrupt your Sunday afternoon to go open the house for them. You can just say, yeah, absolutely. Show me, I always ask for like a copy of their business card or their DRE license or something, so that I know that they're legit. And then you can verify that on the DRE's website if you want to. And then you can give them that lockbox code for the contractor's box. Okay. During this pre-listing period, we're also going to open pre-escrow, right, with your favorite escrow officer. We want to make sure that they get that prelim pulled ahead of time and that there aren't any red flags that pop up that's going to hinder the sale of this property. We're going to order that NHD report, the Natural Hazard Disclosure Report. I usually do it with the environmental report, and we're going to upload that report to HomeLight Listing Management. In addition to that, when you get that email from the NHD company with the NHD report in it, it usually has all those hyperlinks to like the earthquake hazards booklet and the environmental hazards booklet and keeping yourself safe from lead-based paint. I'm going to download all those booklets and upload them individually to my HomeLight Listing Management file, so the buyer can't say that those weren't provided to them, because they can't be expected, even though now in our new contract, this says that links to those items are fine. I want to make sure that I'm covered 100%. And it's not going to hurt me to throw those into my HomeLight Listing Management file. Same thing of once I get that preliminary title report, it's going to have a link to my CC&Rs, my covenants, conditions, and restrictions that are on most properties inside the city limits. I'm going to download those CC&Rs off that preliminary title report and upload them to HomeLight Listing Management as a separate file. I want to make sure the buyer saw those. This is also a good opportunity if the property is in an HOA to make sure we order all of those HOA documents. Okay. Next, the emails are going to continue to go out to my sellers. So we'll talk about those. We'll revisit that listing email template here in a minute. We're going to make sure we review all the disclosures for completeness that the sellers completed, and then we're going to upload those to the HLM. We're going to send the seller info request to title. So when we pre-open escrow, title's going to send us a piece of paper that usually, which is so stupid, still needs to have a wet signature on it, which means it needs to have a real signature, not a digital signature. I think it's the only thing in the world that still requires a wet signature that's not an official document, but it's how they order the payoff. So title's going to run checks to make sure there's no liens or encumbrances that might attach themselves to the properties. They need that seller info sheet. So that usually goes out to my sellers, and I give them instructions in those emails of how to return it back to me, or that they can return it directly to the title company. And then I make sure the title company gets that copy so they can order the payoff. So we make sure we're good to go on the sale of the home, and that they can make sure that there's no additional liens or anything that's going to need to get paid off that might prevent the sale of the property. We're going to make sure we upload all that stuff to Disclosures.io. It should be HomeLight Listing Management. It used to be Disclosures.io. So Disclosures.io, HomeLight Listing Management, same thing. And then we also, this is a good time to send out those just listed postcards, right? So if we time it right, within like the week of going on market, they should hit mailboxes about the time it hits the market. Okay. Any questions of the pre-listing steps that you might want to take when handling your listings? Okay. Email listing templates. So we talked about email 1 at the signed listing agreement. It also talks about how to prep your house for sale and photos. Email 2 talks about convey or not convey. That is the question. Just so you know, that's usually what I use for my subject line of the email. When selling your home, we have to define what will stay, convey, with the home, and what will go with you, not convey. Typically, items that convey, and this probably needs to be updated because they've changed it. Oh no, I did update it. Items that are attached to your walls and or floors. This includes items such as curtain rods, curtains, decorative shelves, garage cabinets, ceiling lights and fans, chandeliers, coats and towel hooks, Ring doorbells, security cameras and devices, and TV mounts. Your personal property, pictures, wall art, mirrors, except your bathroom mirrors, washer, dryer, refrigerators, are generally considered personal property and do not convey. Other items that stay with the home and when sold are your plants in the yard that are in the ground, shed, patio covers, pool equipment to include the pool vacuum, built-in microwaves, stovetops, ovens, and ranges. Are there any items that you do not wish to convey with the property? Are there items that you would like to leave with the property, right? So I send them this email to get them thinking and walking through their house and thinking about this on what needs to stay and what needs to go. That's email number 2. I usually get a pretty solid response. If the seller comes back with, well, I'd like the following things not to go with the property, I'm going to look through that list and go, yeah, those are all pretty typical. They're not going to go. We're good. Or if they're like, oh, well, the chandelier in our dining room is a family heirloom and we want to take that with us, I'm going to say, then what I'm going to recommend is that you switch it out before we go on the market, because there's nothing worse than the buyer falling in love with that chandelier and you guys losing the sale over the fact that you're not willing to leave the chandelier, which I fully understand since it's your family heirloom, but let's change it out before we go on the market. Right? So that's usually the best course of action if it can be eliminated before we go on market. If not, we just put together a list of the things that do not convey with the property, and I attach that in my HomeLight Listing Management file, and I make it in the private comments of our MLS to review the list of items that do not convey with the property. And please sign it and submit it with any offer. right? So that way everything is on the up and up from the very get-go. We don't have to argue over things that close of escrow, what should have stayed or what should go. Email number 3, California regulations, carbon monoxide and smoke detectors and hot water heaters. A few other items we need to pay attention to. The state of California has a few requirements of all homes when they sell. Your water heater needs to be double strapped. You will need to have a working smoke detector in each bedroom. You will need to have a working carbon monoxide detector and smoke detector in the hallway leading to the bedrooms. If you have a 2-story home, you're going to need one on each floor. Please make sure this is taken care of prior to your home going on the market. If you need help with these items, please let us know so that we can help facilitate making this happen, right? We're getting ahead of this so that it's not an issue when the appraiser comes out. Email number 4, this goes out from my transaction coordinator. When with the pre-escrow docs, the glides head up and the link for HomeLight listing management. FYI, the sign has been ordered for your home and will be installed this week, or you can put whatever day it's going to be installed. The following items I need you to complete this week prior to your home going on the market. HomeLight. A HomeLight file has been created for your home. All disclosures, inspections, and report for your property can be found at, and then I include the link for that file. Your emails have been linked to this file. Every time the file is updated, you will receive an email notifying you. Glide. Glide is a program we use for our mandatory seller disclosures that need to be completed. Later today, you will receive an email from Glide titled, "Please complete blank avenue," and I would fill in their address. Mandatory seller disclosures. Please complete all the documents this week prior to your home going on the market. Seller information sheet. Please complete the attached document. This item cannot be electronically signed. Once complete, you can fax, scan, and email, hand it off to Amy, or drop it to drop off, or hand deliver it to title. Social security numbers are required. I recommend leaving social security number blank and then calling the title office and giving them your social security number over the phone. Email. Please include this in the subject line. Old Republic title. Attention, Nicole Cisneros, escrow number blank, title company. And then I fill in the title company's information if they're going to email it. That way they're emailing it directly to the title company. And then again, I've instructed them that, hey, I recommend leaving the social security numbers blank once you send it over there. Then call them up and ask them to fill in those numbers. That way we're not emailing things on unsecured links with social security numbers. Don't hesitate to ask Amy or I if you have any questions. Okay, email 4. Email number 5 is right before we go on market, showing your home. You have been set up with your own personal showing app to allow the agents of potential buyers to schedule showings. Please download the app called Showing Time. You will want to create a user based on the email you have provided to us, as that's how it will link the account we created for you to your login. Through this app, you will receive requests for showings and be able to approve or deny them. If you deny them, you can propose other times that will work better for you, for your schedule. If possible, do whatever you can to make the requested showings work. This app will keep a calendar of confirmed showings for you so that you can keep your brain straight as we move through the process of selling your home. It will also provide a platform to get feedback from the showings. Later, we will be able to schedule inspections here as well. Here are some of the expectations I have of you to make your home show ready. Vacate the property while it is being shown. Leave the home 10 minutes prior to scheduled showing time and plan on 45 minutes per showing. Turn on all the lights. Keep the house at a comfortable temperature. Open drapes and blinds. Keep pets and pet-related items secured outdoors. Play quiet background music. Light the fireplace if seasonally appropriate and if you're going to be nearby. Infuse the home with a comforting scent like apple spice or vanilla. A good way to make your home smell good is to bake cookies right before. It will make your home smell amazing, and people love cookies as they view homes. If you're going to be gone for the day, make sure your home is show ready, even if we don't have any scheduled showings. Okay, right? We're just setting the expectations. Here's how I want you to leave it. Email number 6 goes out on their on-market date. Congratulations, today is the day. Your home is officially on the market. Below, you will find a link to your live listing. Please feel free if you have any questions or concerns. It should say, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Here's where I'm going to find the link on my website for their listing, and I'm going to post it there. We will update you on your property weekly. You will receive an email on Monday and a call on Tuesday. When we receive offers, we will notify you immediately to let you know that an offer has been received and set a plan to review offers. We're going to check to see if Glide and the seller information sheet was completed. If not, we're going to add a little blurb there to make sure that they complete those items. Okay, congratulations. You also, just a heads up, you want to check on Zillow that their property is going to show up because the seller is going to check Zillow to make sure their property is on there. I promise. Okay. Once we're in contract, right? To sellers, congratulations, we're in contract. Please make sure blank are completed if there's any missing disclosures. All of the disclosures, inspections, reports, and other documents will be loaded onto the HomeLight listing management file for you to access. You should have already received a link, but the link is also located below. And below is the key information and dates in regards to this transaction. And then my TC usually puts in like a grid that shows like accepted dates, like inspection contingency due, appraisal contingency due, loan due, close of escrow date, right? So all those important dates. If the sellers are going to remain in the property after the close of escrow, we identify that. If it's contingent on the sellers finding a replacement property, those dates are on there as well. And then email 8 goes to title, the other agent, and if you have any like team or whatever, it's going to introduce everybody and include that SkySlope email on there along with all the dates as well. Any questions about those listing email templates that I send out? And again, there was a link to that in the chat box. So if you want those, just snag that link and then save a copy of it. Claudia.
Yes. So I see that they're labeled, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 8, but time frame. So is it like one day after this, one day after that, or
Yeah, so email one always goes out as soon as I have that signed listing agreement. Emails 2 through, I think it's like 5. Yeah, 2 through 5 are kind of going to be spaced depending on what my listing time period is. So if I'm like a month out from listing, email 1 might go out at signed listing agreement. Email 2 may go out like the next week. Email 3 may go out the week after that. Email 4 is always going to go out kind of that week right before we go on market. So kind of within 7 days. If you're working on a tighter time frame, like we signed the listing agreement today, and we're going on market in a week, then we want to tighten that up, right? They might get email 1 today, email 2, email 3, email 4, email 5. It might come one right after the other one. So it just kind of depends on your listing. But email 4 always goes out to them within a week of the on market date, because that's asking them to complete all of the seller disclosures and to get that document back to title. And then email 6 is the on market date. And then email 7 is once you're in contract, 7 and 8. So that's kind of the time frame. Those middle ones though, 2 through 4, those have some leadway as far as you can kind of strategically plan them based on your time frames.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Oops. All right, back to our transaction action plan. So then we get an active listing, right? We want to make sure that once our listing is active, that we're getting open house feedback. So if we're hosting those open houses, we want to collect feedback from the people walking through and make notes of it. If you have somebody else hosting your open houses, ask them what the feedback was so we can provide that to the sellers. We're going to try to get any showings that are scheduled. We're going to try to get feedback from those agents as well so that we can share that with our sellers. Send listing reports to sellers from the MLS. Send status updates. So I usually do, so that listing report goes to the seller as part of that email that is on the on market date with a link to their live listing. And then status updates, I've told them they're going to get an email from me every Monday and a phone call on Tuesday. Okay, if we get offers before then or whatever, they'll hear from me before. Most of the time on that weekly email, that's where I want to provide feedback that I've received, good or bad. How many showings we have. if I think we're anticipating some offers coming in, just kind of what the general consensus is. It's also a good time that you can go into like Zillow and look up the number of views and the number of saves. Like you could update them on all that information as well. So it's a good time to just kind of figure out how you want to report to the sellers of what they think is going to look impressive. Also in Barry's, you can look up how many people have viewed it, how many agents and how many buyers on the Barry's platform. So there's some different things that you can include on that status update on a weekly basis. We want to make sure that we input any open houses into the MLS. We're going to set our marketing action plan into action. So whatever your marketing plan is for your active listing needs to start. We'll negotiate any price improvements as necessary. Okay. If we do that, we want to make sure we do pricing improvement paperwork and do the listing modification in the MLS for that price improvement. Keep in mind too, if your listing agreement signed before, we're backing back up again to that pre-listing. If your listing agreement is signed before your on market date, before 3 days, right? So MLS gives us 3 days from signed listing agreement to have that property in the MLS. If it's signed before then, which most usually are, then we need to have the SELM form signed, which is the seller exclusion from the multiple listing service. You will find that in your CarForms library. And in addition to that, we want to come over here to our Barry's login. Useful links has exclude listing. We want to click on this link and follow the instructions to exclude your listing from the MLS so that you don't get a nasty gram when it does go live of the fact that it says your listing agreement was signed on March 19th and it didn't go active until April 4th. So we just start, and you don't even have to upload anything. You just have to put it in there. We do need that SELM form though for our files for compliance purposes, but that's where to find that on your Barry's dashboard. Useful links, exclude listing. Okay. All right. All right. Upload all changes into SkySlope. So if we do a listing modification with the modification of terms form, we want to make sure we update our SkySlope file and update the actual SkySlope file itself with any changes, the listing amount and stuff. So you can list that on there. As we review, or as we start getting offers, we want to review those offers and prep for seller presentation. Let's look at this. Hold on. Just trying to find my multiple offer. Just can't find anything in my file today. But I have a spreadsheet that gives it side by side on the offer review. It's probably in my other Google Drive. So I'll see if I can find that one as well. So I'll find that and upload it unless Abby beats me to it. But I think it's in the Petard Riddle file. But it just identifies the key points of the offers and puts them side by side. So if you get multiple offers, you can throw it on there. Even if you just get one offer, I still like to put it on there because it just makes it really clean for the seller to review instead of getting buried in all of the additional documents that get with a listing or with an offer. So I like to do that. Let's see here. We're going to go Drive. All right. We want to review offers, right? Call the lender to verify the buyer's information. You usually want to do that before you sit down with your sellers. Then you're going to present the offers to sellers. Once we selected an offer, we're going to send that offer to the seller for signatures or the counter offers to the sellers for signatures. And then we're going to make sure that our TC also has copies of all of those documents. Okay. Once we come to an agreement, whether it's through counter offers or just pure acceptance, then we are officially in contract or in escrow. Look at that. Abby's so magical. I think she beat me to it. Offer comparison right there. The link is in the chat box. Actually, it's not in the chat box. There we go. Now the link's in the chat box. So you should be able to have that. It should not let you edit it. You'd have to open it and then save a copy to your drive, but that offer comparison. that follows the outline of the grid, which keeps it nice. Okay. Any questions about the offer process? All right, fabulous. Then we are officially in contract. Now it's time to send those under contract postcards out. The goal is to send them the same people that you sent the just listed to. And the good news and the goal here is to share the story, right? Not just, oh, we're under contract or accepted offer. They'll be like, why'd you send this to me? But you're going to be like, accepted offer in 3 days, multiple offers received, offer accepted above asking, like whatever it is to share your story to make those other people in that same neighborhood go, oh my gosh, I was thinking about selling my house and now I want Jillian to sell my house for me. Right? Like that's what we want. And just saying under contract's not going to get you there. So you want to share the story. Our goal is, you know, multiple touches to the same like 100 people around that house, because statistics say that somebody that can see that sign in the yard is going to sell their house. So we want to have multiple touches to start building relationships with those people. We're going to send accepted offer, counter offer, proof of funds, pre-approval to our transaction coordinator, who's going to take care of putting those in SkySlope, making sure everybody has copies of those. We also want to send any rejected offers to our transaction coordinator, so they have a copy of those as well. The MLS should move to contingent. Keep in mind that anytime we have any contingencies in place, there's at least 8 of them on our default residential purchase agreements. Anytime we have contingencies in place, we should move it to contingent and not pending. Once all the contingencies have been removed, or if we receive a non-contingent offer, meaning it doesn't have any contingencies, then it would go to pending right away. But that's the difference between contingent and pending. We're going to send the intro email to escrow. We're going to send the completed offer, counter offers to buyer's agent with our intro email. We're going to upload all those to SkySlope. We're going to create our demand. I like to do it early, even though we don't necessarily send it off ahead of time, just so it's there and done. Because oftentimes we get to the end and we kind of forget about it. Just being honest. Make sure to complete your agent visual inspection disclosure. I do that through Glide as well. We will have an in-person training on the Avid coming up in about 2 weeks. The time and date will be disclosed here shortly. But we will be doing an in-person Avid training. Your Avid should be done as close to accepted offer as possible. I usually like to do it within like 24 hours of accepted offer. I usually don't do the Avid before we accept an offer, because it's my proof of the condition of the property when we accepted that offer. Okay, that's the only real proof we have of what that condition is. Otherwise, it's he said, she said, if there's ever an issue. Claudia, did you have a question?
Yeah, it was about that. So it's because I like to pair it with my photography, right? So whether it be listing or buying, you know, so you're saying it's, I mean, legally it's better, I guess, if we just wait till we are in contract.
Yeah, legally it's better to wait until you're in contract. I think even on the Avid form, it states that you're in contract or ask for the contract date. But yeah, it's better to do once you're in contract and not 2 weeks before you're looking for material issues to disclose. And so if we do it 2 weeks before we're on market or before we have an accepted offer, then things could change between there. And then you may have an issue that you have to go back and modify it or change it. And again, it gives you that proof, like the seller is supposed to deliver that property to the buyer on the close of escrow in the same condition as the date of acceptance. And so by doing that Avid within 24 hours of accepted contract, that's your best proof of the condition of that property on the accepted contract date, in case there was ever a squabble or a disagreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We want to make sure we have those prelim and CC&Rs. We want to make sure we have that NHD disclosure if we don't have it already. You want to confirm the information on the prelim. Again, if we opened escrow early, or they've chosen that same escrow company, it makes it super easy. We already have all that done. If not, and we've switched title companies, now we're going to make sure that all the information is accurate again and that we get that information. Confirming information on the prelim, we want to confirm the seller's names, that who we had on the listing agreement matches the prelim. We also want to confirm the address. There are a couple streets. I know of one in Fairfield that was recorded incorrectly. So it shows up differently on the street sign than it does on the preliminary title report. Wah, 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 right? So we just need to make sure everything's accurate with what's on the listing agreement, and the purchase agreement matches that preliminary title report. We also want to verify that there aren't any liens or encumbrances that we didn't know about that showed up on that preliminary title report that we weren't aware of. Send any additional disclosures to the seller or listing agent for signatures. Confirm selling agent reviewed the DIO or the home light listing management file and has all the disclosures that they need. Okay, so usually this goes out in an email to the selling agent, which is the buyer's agent, of, hey, just wanted to make sure you had time to open up that home light listing management file. Are there any disclosures that you're going to need from the seller that are not in that file? Right? We want to make sure that we get them everything that they need to make sure that it runs smooth. Confirm any inspection dates and times with the selling agent, right? Input inspections into showing time. I usually do that just so it shows up on their showing time calendar, because then it makes it easy for them to be like, when did she say those inspections were? They can just pull up the app. Complete the appraisal packet prior to appraisal. Again, on all my listings, I complete that appraisal packet. I've gone over it in the past. It just, you can find it on our YouTube channel. If you search like appraisal, like ACE the appraisal or the appraisal packet should come up as a class to show you what I do for my appraisers. But it includes the comps that I want them to use, my comparisons to those comps. It includes the details of the property, upgrades, features, things that may make it more desirable to a buyer, and then a copy of the contract and any counter offers, because I've had appraisers come to my properties before without the counter offers and they appraised it based on the wrong contract price. Remind the buyer's agent of the investigation contingency, right, deadline, and to return signed disclosures. I usually do that 5 days before that deadline, and then 1 day, and then again 1 day before. Get inspection copies. Remember, contractually, the buyer's required to provide the seller copies of any inspections they have on the property. Review the buyer return disclosures for completeness. Negotiate any repair requests or extensions of time or anything else that the buyer's trying to negotiate in the middle of the contract process. Schedule any repairs if necessary. Remind the buyer's agent of the appraisal contingency deadline and the loan contingency deadline. Again, that's going to be 5 days before those due dates. With any of the contingencies, they're going to get a reminder 5 days before it's due. And then again, the day before, 24 hours before it's due again. We want to request the appraisal copy if it's a FHA or VA loan. Again, remember, based on the residential purchase agreement, if the buyer is an FHA or a VA buyer, they are required to provide a copy of the appraisal to the seller. I just like to be nosy and look at them, even if they came in at value. I like to see what the appraisers are doing. Upload inspections and appraisal to Home Light Listing Management. So those are the buyer's inspections and a copy of the appraisal. And then once all contingencies are removed, we're going to switch that over to pending. Once we're pending, then we're going to schedule the staging removal. We're going to schedule the sign removal for the close of escrow. We're going to send the contingency removal and disclosures to the seller and listing agent for signature. So oftentimes, like the buyer's agent's avid's going to come over, contingency removals come over, and those all need signatures or initials. Technically, contingency removals don't need the seller's signature on them at all. I usually still send them over to my sellers and have them initial someplace on there so that the sellers have seen that their contingencies have been removed. So they have proof that we've received those. Send signed contingency removals or disclosures back to the buyer's agent. Upload all those signed documents to SkySlope. Double check commission demand for accuracy, right? We've negotiated any price changes, credits, whatever it might be. So here I'm going to double check that demand for accuracy. And then we're going to send a copy of that demand to title and make sure that we've signed off on it. Any invoices that are being paid through escrow, we're going to make sure that title has copies of those. Maybe your photos are being paid through there or any repairs, right? Remember, if we're gonna put repairs paid through close of escrow, the lender needs to know about those repairs. Otherwise, they need to get paid outside of escrow. Okay, only repairs that the lenders, the buyer's lender knows about can be paid through escrow. Okay. Upload all signed documents to SkySlope. Oh, we did that
I'm
already.
sorry, Amy,
Yes.
really quick. So
Absolutely.
the lender doesn't need to know as long as it's coming out of the seller proceeds though, right? Or is that what you're saying? Yes, it does need to be coming out there, or they need to know.
If it's coming out of the seller's proceeds and it's going to be on the seller's closing statement, the lender needs to know about it.
Okay, still.
Yes. Some ways to get around that are sometimes you could call it like pre-listing work payable to whoever. Then that doesn't red flag it because it doesn't show up as a repairs or to like a roofing company. So there's ways that you can kind of work around that. But you just have to have a good explanation for it and it still might red flag. So the lender, anytime lender sees repairs on a closing statement, even if it's on the seller's side, they're going to be like, what repairs were done? How come we weren't notified of those? Where's the inspection report? So it's just going to cause a red flag. So if it's being paid through escrow on either the buyer's or the seller side, the lender needs to have record of it, or you need to get creative with how it's listed on there. Okay. Schedule, and a good way to do that might be calling the buyer's lender and saying, hey, the seller had some work done on the property before we went into escrow. And I was going to pay that. Is that going to cause a problem? Right. So just ask. All right. Then we are going to schedule the seller signing. Once we're pending, I usually go ahead and schedule the seller signing. They don't have to wait until the last couple days to sign. They can sign ahead of time. Oftentimes, title and escrow likes to wait until the buyer's docs have been delivered to title, only in case there's something else that needs to be signed by the seller, but they're usually willing to sign them ahead of time. Make sure you review that estimated settlement statement. Make sure all invoices that are scheduled to be paid are on there. Make sure your commissions are correct. Make sure any credits to the buyers are on there, that the home warranty shows as a debit to the seller if the seller's paying for it, right? Make sure all that's on there. If you're having title, send out a satisfaction survey as part of the closing package that the sellers complete at the closing table. Make sure title has a copy of that. You can attend the seller signing. I often do not attend my seller signings any longer. I used to attend them all. Now I do not, but I do make sure that my seller knows that I am available to them in case there's any questions. Okay. And part of scheduling the seller for signing is me reaching out to the seller and saying, hey, it's time to sign those final documents to prepare for the close of escrow. Where would you like to sign? You can sign at the title company or at your house, or if there's somebody place else that's more convenient. And what days and times are best? I just need you to sign before this day and this time. And then they usually send me over best days and times. I take that information, I forward it over to the title company and go, here's where the sellers would like to sign. Here's their schedule. Can you please schedule their signing with a notary? Right? Super simple. And then on the day of that, I say, hey, I know that you guys are signing today at 2 o'clock. I'm unable to be there during the signing. However, I'm going to make sure that I have my phone available. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to either call or text me. I'll be watching for your name to pop up. Right? So they know that I'm being attentive, even if I'm not sitting there at the table with them. If you have a referral rewards program, now's a good time to send that to the sellers. We want to make sure that we review that SkySlope file for completeness. Once we are on record, then the officially closed emails and phone calls go to the sellers, as well as like the thank you email goes out to everybody that was involved in the transaction. And that brings us to the close of escrow. Any questions about the active or under contract portion of a listing? All right. Once we're closed, you want to make sure to move that listing to closed in the MLS. I would say that's the number one thing that gets forgotten on most listings. I would say it probably gets forgotten like 65% of the time. The listing agent blanks it finally closed and they forget to move it to sold. Our file in SkySlope's not complete until we have that sold report uploaded into SkySlope. So make sure it's closed. A good time to remind them. It's even a good time to be like, hey, thank you so much for a successful transaction. Please let me know when the property's been moved to sold. Here's my Barry's MLS ID number to help you, right? Or if you have a team or a co-agent, please remember to list my co-agent, blah, 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 once you mark it sold, right? So really good time to do that. We want to complete that SkySlope file so that we can get paid. You can input your closed sale into Zillow. If it's a listing, most of the time Zillow goes ahead and pulls it over under your recent transactions all by itself, but I usually like to make sure it ends up there. Don't forget to remove the lockbox. So usually I instruct my sellers to leave all additional keys and remotes and anything in a drawer in the kitchen. And then I let the buyer's agent know that they can grab the key out of the lockbox and let me know once they've pulled that key and that the additional keys are in a drawer in the kitchen. And then once they've removed that from the lockbox, then I go and pull the lockbox off the property. You want to make sure that you move it to closed in your contact relationship manager, your CRM system, if it has transaction tracking. You want to set up your sold touch campaign so that now those sellers that just closed are on that sold campaign, which is going to be things like checking in with them in like 48 hours to make sure how the moving process went or that they're settled in their new home. It may include like sending them a closing gift in a month. It may include touching base with them to make sure their other purchase is going smoothly if they're buying in another state or that they traveled well, right? So make sure you've got that sold touch campaign. Send a thank you card to your seller. Send a thank you card to the selling agent, which would be the buyer's agent. Send a thank you card to the buyers because we know something like 75% of buyers don't use the same agent for their next transaction. So now's a good time. Their agency relationship is officially over. Now's a good time to start adopting those orphans. Send out your just sold postcards. Again, we want to share our story of why somebody would want to utilize us, not just that it's sold, but why we are better than everybody else in getting that property sold. Deliver that closing gift. You're going to archive that HomeLight listing management file. This might be a good time too, like part of your sold touch campaign. Maybe here's a link to that HomeLight listing management file. If you'd like to download a copy of all the documents in there so that you have them for your record, here it is. Or here's a digital copy of your closing statement so that you have a copy of it for when it comes time to do taxes. Part of that sold touch campaign is probably going to be like at the beginning of January, sending that to them again. Okay. Move zip forms to close so it shows out of your active transactions. And then you're going to update the address for your sellers in the database, your CRM, and input those buyers. We have those buyers' names. We have their address. Input those buyers into your CRM. Maybe even get a closing gift for those buyers for the house that you just sold. Swing by at some point, drop off the closing gift or drop off a copy of their home warranty if they got one, right? Swing by. Hey, my name's Amy. I was a listing agent on this property. I just wanted to make sure that you have a copy of your home warranty in case anything happens. How is everything going, by the way? Are you doing okay with the house? Is there anything that you need more explanation on, right? We sold the property. Oftentimes we know more about it than they probably do. And we have connection to the seller. So if they end up with a question, we can reach out to the sellers and go, oh, the buyers had a question about how to work the light above the fireplace. Which switch is that? Right? And then that's a good time to be like, cool, great. What's your phone number and what's your email address? And that way I can get you any information the seller may have thought of afterwards that might be helpful. Or if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, right? So now I've got their contact information. I already have their address. Now I can put them in their CRM and really adopt them as orphaned buyers. That takes me to the end of the listing process. Questions?
I have a question regarding the form, Amy.
Yes.
So where, you know, how you have it listed as current owner and new owner at the top.
Of which form?
Oh no, just kidding. Where it says, or so at the very top it says agent and agent, row D or column D and C. What does
yeah,
that mean?
Yeah, so current owner and new owner, that was just like when I hired my admin one, well, technically I took my transaction coordinator and moved her into an admin role with transactionally. So I had who originally owned that. So on a basic file, like inputting the file into SkySlope would be the transaction coordinator's job versus mine. Your transaction coordinator is going to do these jobs down here, right? And I'm responsible for everything else basically,
Mhm.
right? So that would be like a typical transaction coordinator. And then we added the admin one, which again was really just my TC, but I made her an admin. So these were then all the things that I handed off to my admin transactionally. So then she started sending out, like at the top here, start the listing emails. That was done by admin. Send the seller contact information, the TC, that would be done by your admin, especially if your admin and your TC are two different roles. Send disclosures out, input
Okay.
showing time with emails, that all rolled to my admin one.
Okay,
Does
so
that
it
make
sounds like,
sense?
so the first column is like if it's just you and your TC, and the second column is more like if you have your transaction coordinator and your admin.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? I really like to spell rolls, ROLLS. I think it's because I dream of like bread 90% of the time. So I have to think really hard on that. Any other questions before we wrap up today? I tried to do a little explanations of things over here for things that maybe needed it. I did share that listing email template with you, so you should have a link to this transaction action plan in the chat box. You should have a link to the email templates in the chat box. And you should have a link to the offer comparison in the chat box as well. I will try to find the link that allows you to go in there and save a copy of this Google form, the back end of it, so you can edit it. It was tricky, but I think there's a listing in the Foxhole that allows you to do that, or link. So I'll find that. So if you log your, oh, there we go. I think so. Let's see. Abby just sent me a link. Let me check it. No, Abby, because that one's the fill out one. I'll try to find it. So if you register your attendance today, Abby's going to kick up the attendance link, I'm sure, any moment. Then I will make sure to get you a copy of that Google form. I'll probably post it in our Foxhole group again as well. I'll draw your attention to it in Foxhole so that you can find that. It's really tricky to share a form on the back end, but there's your attendance link. So log that attendance in there. We will get you a copy of that Google form. It makes it super simple to get everything filled out. And we have Old Republic Title Company tomorrow talking about probate sales, I think. And then we have on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. we will be covering like Listrak and Live Easy, which is what they changed Move Easy to. And then there's another thing as well. That Listrak, I believe, if I'm thinking of the right site, it gives you, it's a good way to track your listing data to that email that you're going to send to your sellers on a weekly basis with an update before you enter into contract. It says like how many views and shows and stuff. It pulls all that information. I think that's Listrak. So I'll confirm that on Wednesday night, but I believe that's what that is. So it'll be a good training then. And we will have a special training coming up on the 5th of April. It's a Friday. It'll be in person. I will probably offer it via Zoom as well, but we'll be talking about the 12-week year because we're at the end of the first quarter. We got January, February, March under our belt. So now we need to focus in on quarter number 2. So we'll talk about how to divide your year up into the 12-week year and how to focus in on that. It's pretty cool. It'll help make you more productive, I promise. And then we'll also, it'll probably be 5th, 6th, 7th. It'll probably be on the 8th, but it may be over the weekend, but it'll probably be on the 8th. We'll be doing a live Avid training. So we'll actually go to a property and I'll show you how to use Glide to do your Avid and what to look for in your agent to visual inspection disclosure. So that's all coming up. Oh, tomorrow is not just probate sales with Old Republic. It's got free lunch as well. So make sure you show up in the office for that. It will be in office and via Zoom, but if you show up via Zoom, you don't get free lunch. So only in the office, free lunch. And then make sure to just confirm that you're going to be there with Carly, so we have a good head count and enough food. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Claudia, I'm going to stay on for you, and everybody else, we will see you tomorrow.